Yeah, I love the book. The book, I was on a journey, having left Love and Hip Hop, trying to discover where I wanted to go with my career, went to Wild and Out, really enjoyed being received in a different way on MTV, and then just felt like there was something missing that I hadn't given to my audience. I felt like Love and Hip Hop did me a disservice, and people just saw me as an emotionless tree. And I really wanted people to know that there were other layers to me. You know, I'm a generous person. I have a heart, say it how it is, and afraid to be confrontational if I have to be. And so when I went to Wild and Out, MTV loved me so much that VH1 didn't understand why they loved me so much. So took a meeting with VH1. I said, look, I'll go back to Love and Hip Hop again for one more season, with the condition that I can tell my brother's story, because it had a lot of impact on my life, and if I can try to reconcile with my father, and just really lay up this book that I'm thinking of doing, because I want to kind of put all my pain in a book that can be an offering to other people who are going through their own personal journeys. And so VH1 and I figured out the deal. I went back and I did it, and then I launched the book and did a book tour, and then COVID hit. But I was able to go out and reach thousands and thousands of people in live audiences. Remy Ma hosted one event for me in New York. Cardi B called in and bought the whole audience books in my hometown. So I was able to reach a lot of people. But the book there was no strategy like, how do we get this #1 on bestseller and all that. I mean, it is a best-selling book on Amazon. We didn't get New York bestseller, but it was a book that had a lot of impact on people. So it was great.
It was really good. I mean, growing up, were you, because you had a lot of struggles, like, were you into pop culture and like celebrity gossip and all that growing up, or you had a lot of other things obviously going on, or like, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I mean, growing up as a kid, I was in foster care. And I always looked at TV and radio, Michael Jackson, the Whitney Houston, the Princes, the Madonnas, all those icons back in our day. And I grew up in an environment where I was around an eclectic group of music. So it was, John Bon Jovi and Def Leppard, as well as Guns N' Roses on all the other stuff. So I always was a fan of entertainment. I just didn't know where I would fit because I was too afraid to fail. And even today, I don't audition. I did one audition. They liked me and I didn't get the job. And I just, from that point on, decided I was never going to audition again, because I never thought I had the talent to make it. So when I saw the boom of social media and blogging and all of that, I just felt like, okay, I understand business and I understand pop culture and have relationships. Let me see if I can mix this all up as like batter to a cake and bake this thing called Hollywood Unlocked. So that was kind of how it all happened.
And this all kind of started with all your other media connections, like kind of simultaneously while you were on Love and Hip Hop. That was part of the reason why you wanted to leave as well.
Yeah, I mean, I did Love and Hip Hop to promote Hollywood Unlocked. So Love and Hip Hop was less about being a reality star, more about using all this free marketing. It's a show that airs in front of millions of people. My first line out of my mouth is, I'm Jason Lynn, I'm Hollywood Unlocked. I mean, I branded my name, I branded my site. I knew nothing about like the reality of the business and how I was going to figure it all out, but I was able to figure it all out. And, Love and Hip Hop, although it was a ratchet ass show, it was definitely good for, springboarding my company.
It was. I mean, at least, now I think people come into reality TV knowing like this is a great platform, but like back in the day when you did it, there's very few people that did it successfully and kind of launched. I think of you, I think of like Bethany Frankel. I don't think of many others that are like, here's a captive audience of people.
Yeah. Yeah. And Cardi B, I mean, she's another one who's like,
that's true.
She's used social, we just had dinner in Paris with Christian Louboutin. I introduced them for her birthday this year. And she was telling basically the start of her career. And he asked her, like, how did you get so famous? And she said, I did this reality show and it kind of gave me a boost. And then I just took off.
That's true. Well, I always say things like, because I interview a lot of reality TV stars here, like, you can't challenge a network. You're never going to win. Like, you're making me eat my words, Jason, because I say, like, you can't challenge a network. You're never going to win. I've been on some reality TV shows too. Like, I'm very familiar with the contracts. They're really harsh, but you very publicly got out of your contract with VH1. I guess what my big question is, like, where did those balls come from? Like, you know what I mean? Like, were you, you weren't this media mogul that you are now. Like, were you ever scared of, like, you don't like to audition, but were you ever scared of like, I'm going to take on this network head on?
First of all, I appreciate that you did your research, because nobody's asked me that question. And I take a lot of pride in the fact that I stood up for what I believed in. I never was afraid of losing anything. I never was afraid of being blackballed. I never was, because at the end of the day, I own my brand, I own my company, I own my relationships, I own all the extensions. And I look at all my partners, whether it's a network that I'm talent on, whether it's whatever, I look at it as like, we need each other. So for you to shut me out is a disservice you're doing to yourself. I went back to Love and Hip Hop under a couple of expectations. One, that I'd be able to tell my story and be very clear that I was not there for, to give any ownership of my brand. They tried to own percentage of my brand. They tried to give me a $2 million gag clause where I could never talk about them or I would be sued. And I just fought them on all that. I was just like, you can't censor me. You can't tell me to come in the show and be the voice of the culture and talk shit about what I think, but then tell me that you're going to control what I think. Like, it just doesn't work.
Right.
So once COVID happened and I had time to really reconcile with the book tour and where I was in my life and the fact that I really wanted I wanted my brand on television to become a reflection of who I am as a person. And I just felt like being on a show in the midst of Black Lives Matter and George Floyd, where Black people were encouraged to be in combat with one another, just didn't align with what I wanted to do. So I just asked them to let me go. We weren't shooting anyway, and then they didn't want to let me go. So I started the whole Free Jason Lee campaign, and then they decided it was best to just let me go.
Yeah, which I think, I don't know how many people have done something like that and started a campaign that's that public and just kind of walked away. So
yeah.
Do you think you were an exception though? Like you said, like they wanted you to sign this clause, which I think is ridiculous, this $2 million clause, which actually goes against your whole actual business. Because your job is to just be honest and report what you see and not talk about that. Do you think that had anything to do with it? Like, not taking anything away from you, but you have this huge platform. Do you think the average person, it would still be as easy for them to get out of something like this?
I think that especially people of color have to continue to look for opportunities that allow them the space to be themselves and to grow and not be pigeonholed into being this monolith creature that they want to create that decimates our own culture. And then it holds us to contracts that aren't even good for ourselves. Let's be clear. Love and hip hop for me was, in the beginning, was never good money. Even when I went back, even though I got a 500% increase, it was decent, but it was never about the money for me. It was about leveraging a marketing platform where I got millions of people in their homes every day and on their phones, every week to be able to promote myself. So ultimately, I knew what I was in it for. I think some people get into it for different reasons, fame or whatever. But there's no fortune in reality shows unless you're building an empire like mine, or you're building like what Bethany was able to do. So ultimately, I don't know if I was the exception, but I wish that more people had courage. The conversations with them were very clear. It was never negotiable to me that I was getting out of that contract. And I was very clear to them that I was going to do whatever it took to get out. And I'm glad that that campaign only lasted, 3 weeks. They were just like, go away. So
right. They're like, please just go away. No, I agree. I don't think, I tell people all the time, like, you're not starting a career in reality TV for the dollars and cents, especially not the first year, because you're not making anything.
Right. Exactly. At all.
What about, when you have someone like a Nene Leaks, like, what do you feel about that? Like, do you think there's certain people, like, do you think everyone could always bounce back from challenging like the institution? Like Nene had this very public breakup with Bravo, and or do you think there are people that are truly cancelable and that's it?
I think the people that are cancelable are people who don't own anything. Like, if you own your own platform and you build it, like I built an audience of millions of people that I talk to every day, whether it's on radio, whether it's on the podcast, whether it's on social, whether it's on my live shows or whatever. Even my radio show and my Fox show deals with Fox and with iHeart, I own the deals. I just license my name to them and I license my show, but I own it all. I own the content. And I think that ownership is just important. But if you go in your talent, then you have to play your position. You know that your talent, your work for hire, and they hold the purse. So ultimately, they're going to make all the decisions. But in my case, in my businesses, with all of my relationships, I sign all the checks. So I don't know that it would be the same. I would say, like, for Nene's case, I think that she's extremely talented. I talked to her the other day, and she's a big name. And but what I think is smart about Nene is she owns businesses, so she's always going to make money. She can always do appearances. She can always launch products. But that reality show platform is a big, big advertising platform for people who have brands like Nene. So, you know, it's very complicated, but I hope that she figures it out.